I wanted to do this video for quite some time. I kept putting it off, and then I had surgery and had a complication and just couldn't get to it until now. So I'm excited to talk about this because what I want to do in the next two videos is why I like Android and want to leave iOS, and then ultimately why come back to iOS from Android. And I think that in these videos, there would be great information for blind individuals, developers, Google and Apple. Not that they're going to watch or care, but I think there would be interesting things for everyone in these videos. So stay tuned for it's kind of a two-part series. So the first thing is kind of why I like Android and why I want to leave iOS in the first place. So number one, customization. So with my Galaxy device, and it kind of started with a tablet. It was I always hear sort of the iPhone as being the gateway drug to iOS. I think the tablet for me was the gateway drug to Android because I was able to put notification sounds in, and if a calendar alert went off, it would be my former guide dog that passed away, her bark, or it would be a sound of my choosing. And I just thought that was so cool, and it made the device feel more personalized to me. I've had an iPhone for over a decade now, and none of them have really felt like my device because you can't just drag a notification sound and have it be on your phone and do what you want to do with it. For example, if I wanted my dog's bark to be a sports score alert, I couldn't do that. I can do it on Android. And I think that goes a long way. I mean, I can't do, as a blind person, wallpapers, mean nothing to me. Photos really mean nothing to me, but sounds mean everything. And so having that phone be able to be the notification I want it to be on any app is pretty remarkable. And it just makes it feel like it's my phone and sort of more specialized and tuned to me. So that's probably the first big thing. The second thing I think is Bluetooth inconsistency. So I was talking to my friend about this, who she was like, I never knew Bluetooth was a problem on iOS. And it is and it isn't, right? So my biggest thing about Bluetooth on iOS is, especially if you're using a Bluetooth speaker. So you have no real control of voiceover all that much, meaning, yes, they have fixed the issue where voiceover stays on the device, which is great. The problem is if you double tap or interact with anything, it basically the volume shoots up. And I do know workarounds that you can turn off sound effects or mute the switch on the phone, and that supposedly is supposed to stop it from doing that. It's never stopped it for me. I mean, as soon as I double tap on the next track, it's yelling at me like super loud, and it's highly annoying. So I don't enjoy using voiceover that way. So the fact that when I have my Galaxy and I have separate app sounds, the ability to move what apps I want to the Bluetooth speaker and then keep talkback and anything else I do on my phone is important. So the other thing about that is the iPhone is getting better at this. I will say with iOS 16, it actually is semi working more like Android, but on Android you can actually like use the Google Assistant while your phone is Bluetoothing the sound out to a speaker if using that separate app sounds from Samsung. Now, if you're using other device manufacturers like the Pixel or something, you won't have these options. So it's kind of disappointing. That's where I think sometimes Android is frustrating because not all devices or all manufacturers do all of these features. So, but I still think Bluetooth, it's actually, I'm going to cover it on why I come back. It's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. Uh, so that's another reason. One of the major reasons as well along those lines is the sound assistant with Samsung devices. So one of the cool things is if you're wearing Bluetooth headphones on iOS, you really can't limit the volume of an app at all. So whatever you hear is going to be what you hear. Now you could turn on audio ducking and that helps, but you can't really make voiceover be the loudest thing and leave it consistent. When I first played with Android, of course, 3.5 headphone jacks were still around. And even when you're not using a 3.5 headphone jack, Android has itself, because it's not just one thing out on all the channels, they have multiple sound channels. What a concept. But you can literally control the accessibility volume separate from other volumes. So you can make that be the loudest thing, or you could have it be wherever you want it to be in relation to media volume and notification volume. And I think that's so cool. Now, on the introduction of Bluetooth, that has changed things. And there are people that will tell you that you can go into developer settings and change some setting. I forget what it's called, like assistive sound or something. I can't recall. But it's never worked for me to get that feature back through Bluetooth. But what does work is on Samsung devices, the sound assistant, you can actually go in and turn the volume of an app down. And so therefore, when you're listening to headphones, you can, have TalkBack still be louder than the media source, which is actually super handy and useful. And I enjoy that. I don't always need my media thing being the loudest thing, and I sometimes want TalkBack to be louder than that. So it's really cool. One other big thing for me is just having a file system. I mean, being able to drag and drop file. I kind of covered this a little bit with notifications, but I didn't really elaborate on that part. But having a real file system is awesome. I mean, just being able to put a file somewhere, or in the Samsung My Files app, I'm able to go and connect to my network drive. The Files app on iOS is getting better, but it's still not there. I do use a third-party app called File Browser on iOS, which is pretty good, but it's still frustrating that Apple itself limits you from, having a true good experience, moving and controlling where your files are. The other big thing for me is browsers. So Chrome on iOS, they all use the Safari WebKit. So basically, Chrome, Firefox, everything is ultimately Safari. It runs on the Safari backend on iOS, and it's annoying as hell. On Android, you can run full browsers. So when you run the Samsung Internet browser, you can have ad blockers, you can have all these different things, and each browser can feel different. For example, Kiwi browser lets you play video and lock your screen. You don't have to actually have your phone still unlocked to continue playing the video. So there are advantages to having multiple browsers and using multiple browsers, where on iOS, honestly, there's no real advantage to using anything other than Safari that I know of. I mean, people think they're cool because they're using Chrome on iOS, but they're really not using Chrome. So technically it's Chrome, but it's ultimately running on the Safari WebKit, which is just Safari at the end of the day. So I do like the fact that I have some choice. The other big, I guess, thing on that is just being able to choose default apps for things. Sometimes because it's Apple, they don't let you really choose the default app for something, which is highly annoying. So I think it kind of all bleeds into customization in a way, but these are all little things you notice over time when using an operating system. So I think those are the main reasons I like Android over iOS, or I kind of want to use Android. One other thing that's not really software, but it's hardware, is the choice. So, on iPhone, you get whatever phones Apple decides to put out for you in that given year. So let's say you like the Mini. Well, with the iPhone 14, there's no more Mini. But on Android, you can find something that's probably around that same size, whether it be like the Zenfone or even like a Galaxy S22 or something along those lines. There's tons of options due to the fact that there's several manufacturers. So, for example, I like the flip phone because it flips down and it really fits in my pocket nicely. I think phones are getting too big, and I think Android offers me that. So the fact that they can give you some differentiating hardware, it's not all the same in a sense, um, is nice. However, that being said, I mean, a lot of the flagships on Android just copy Apple, so it's hard to sometimes get behind this. I mean, there's no reason on an Android flagship they still couldn't have a headphone jack and an SD card, but they're not doing that because, well, Apple doesn't do that. So at least, I mean, that's just my take on it. Yes, you can still buy like a mid-range with an SD card slot or a headphone jack, but even those are getting less and less plentiful. And the choices are dwindling when it comes to true user choice. Um, so, but those would be my big things that I love about Android altogether. In one place, I think, as I've used Android, one other quick thing I do want to talk about from an accessibility standpoint that I think is super important is I love the fact on Android, focus is fairly consistent on where it is. Meaning, if I click on an email or I click on a link on a browser and then I go back, I'm pretty much put back where I left off on the last page. VoiceOver used to do this fairly consistently, but anymore, I have no idea where VoiceOver Focus is going to land. It's anybody's guess. And I like that Android somewhat still seems to care about where the talkback focus is. And it's not so jarring when you go somewhere else. And there's a lot about talkback we're going to get into on the next video. But that is one really positive advantage to Android, in my opinion, is the fact that focus is highly consistent. The other thing is, and I'm going to end with this one, is the fact that you have two screen readers. So it's super important. I mean, Windows users know this more than anything, that having two screen readers is never a bad thing. You never know when something will work with one and not the other, or maybe you just get tired of using one and you want to use another. If I use my iPhone and I can't fill out a banking form with VoiceOver for some reason, I have no other option, other than maybe going to a computer or calling Ira or Be My Eyes or something like that. There's no other option I can do myself independently on the phone. Where on Android, I have the ability to use commentary or talkback. And so commentary screen reader, or Jishuo is known, is another screen reader that runs on Android, and it's developed by a Chinese individual, and that they have translators that move the app over to different languages, and it's really powerful. I mean, they are doing some amazing work over there, and I think it makes Android stand out and be different. So I hope everybody likes this. If you have any comments, as always, leave them. Love to chat and discuss things in the comments with you all. And take care for now.